All right, friends, welcome. We are back. It is Monday. I am running solo. If you notice, there's no Tracy here. So I will try to get to the comments as best as I can as I'm sharing some stories, having some fun conversation. But if I don't get to your comments, just be patient. Welcome, Justin from Nashville. Hope that you are doing well. Great to see everyone. If you can't hear me for some reason, let me know that as well. But here we are, right? It's another Monday, another opportunity for us to get our mind in the right place. I am out of COVID quarantine. I'm free and clear. So it's great to be back in the office. Great to be back around people, kind of get out of COVID jail a little bit, so to speak. And so it's a good day to talk about mindset. It's a good day to focus on our mindset as we set the tone for our week. I hope that you guys are doing well wherever you are watching from. I think we're now averaging somewhere around 50 million viewers, which is just unbelievable how amazing this giant family and this platform is. But today I want to talk about the power of life and death. And that may seem like a heavy thing to talk about. And coming off Easter weekend, feels a little bit relevant to be talking about the power of life and death and really what our mind has to do with that. So I have two stories for you. And again, then we'll try to get to questions as best I can. But I have two stories for you where I want to give you some insight into really just how powerful mindset is. And why we do this thing called the Monday mindset, why we talk about mindset, why we're committed to developing a healthy mindset and consistently working on our mindset. So the first story, I think this was within the last 20 years. There was a young man in Seattle. I believe he was in Seattle. If you know the giant language, I'm a connector, details, not always my strength. But there was a young man who his girlfriend broke up with him. And he was devastated. He was depressed. And he was so depressed. He was in such a dark place mentally that he just said, I'm going to end it all. I don't want to live. If I can't be with her, this is not a life that I want to live. And so he overdosed on antidepressants. And 5 minutes later, he started to panic. He realized, wait a minute, no, I've made a mistake. I want to live. I want to live. I don't want to die. This is not what I want. I did the wrong thing. And so he rushes to the hospital. And he gets to the hospital. He's near death, barely breathing. His blood pressure is doing all sorts of crazy things. And he's just moments away from dying. And the doctors are running these tests on him. And they cannot figure out what he's taken. They're not finding any of the drugs in his system. And like, we don't know what to do. This doesn't make sense. Finally, they realized that he had been part of a drug trial for antidepressants. But the drugs that he was taking, the pills that he had been taking, were the placebo. They weren't high power antidepressant drugs. So it's interesting in a couple of ways. Number one, he had thought he'd been taking these high power antidepressants for the last few months. He'd been happier. He'd been in a better mood. He convinced himself that these drugs were working and that he was happier because of them. They were helping him not be so depressed, because for the last several months, he'd been in a really good place. And he attributed that to these drugs that he thought he was taking, except he wasn't. He was taking nothing. But again, believing those drugs were real, believing they were high-powered antidepressants, and that he had overdosed on them, he believed he was dying. And he believed it so much that his body was physically shutting down. He actually was dying. But then when the doctors realized it, said, hey, you're actually good. You've basically just been taking some sugar pills. Like you're completely fine. You're good. Go home. Once he realized that he, in fact, hadn't been taking these high-powered antidepressants, his body recovered. His mind helped his body to recover. He knew that at this point, he was no longer dying. It wasn't real. That's the power of mindset. His mindset took him from life to death and back to life. What he had consumed in his body had not actually changed. It was his mind and the way he thought and what he thought impacting his physical being to the extreme point that he was going to die. Now, another similar story. This is back probably 50, 60 years ago. There's a story of a man in Russia, and he got locked in a refrigerator car, like a train car that is for refrigeration. And he's locked in there, can't get out, and he starts kind of scribbling, writing on the walls. And he's saying, eventually, like, I think these are my last words. I think I'm going to freeze to death. And this guy did. Yeah, he died. He froze to death. Except what was so fascinating is that when they found him, it was 57 degrees in that train car. It was 57 degrees in that refrigerator train car. Why? Because the freezing mechanism component had broken. It was faulty. It wasn't working the right way. And so it actually wasn't freezing in the train car. He wasn't freezing to death. It was 57 degrees, a very comfortable temperature, but he thought it was below freezing. He thought it was 20 degrees in there. And he thought, I can't live in here. I'm not going to get out. This is where I'm going to die. I'm going to freeze to death. He convinced himself of that truth, and it became true. His body, because of his mind, acted as if it was actually freezing to death, and it shut down and killed him. The power of the mind over life and death. Now, I'm not saying that you have the right mindset, you're going to live forever, right? That's certainly not the point. But I think we really have to realize the narratives that we believe and just how powerful those narratives are over us. We are believing either life about ourselves or death about ourselves. Meaning the way that we believe and the way that we think about ourselves is shaping the way that we show up. It's shaping the way that we interact with other people. It's shaping the way that we work. And it is either causing us to live in life or live in death. Maybe some of our physical issues that you have, maybe they actually are a result of an unhealthy mindset, right? We know that stress and anxiety and depression, like these mental things that are very, very real, can have physical impacts on us, can have physical effects on us. But more than that, it's the story that you believe about yourself, the narrative that you're believing about yourself, the narrative that you believe about the world, the narrative that you believe about other people impacts the way that you show up. So the question is, are you believing any false narratives that are holding you back, that are preventing you from living to your fullest, that are preventing you from unlocking your potential? Because we will never become who we were meant to be, who we were created to be, if we're constantly believing less than that. Right? Our beliefs shape our behaviors, and our behaviors shape our outcomes. So we know that the mind has the power of life and death in the way that we show up. We also know that it is a choice. Right? The way that you think is a choice. You get to be responsible for that. You get to choose how you believe. You get to choose how you think. You get to choose how you show up. And maybe you've just allowed other people to do that for you. Maybe you've allowed other people to own your mindset. Maybe you've allowed other people to dictate the way that you think, the way that you believe, the way that you work, the way that you live. And maybe today's the day that you say, no, you know what? I'm no longer going to give somebody else the power over my mindset. It's mine. My mindset is mine. And it's so critical. It's so important that you need to take ownership of it and say, today's the day. Today's the day that I'm going to choose what I believe. Today, I'm going to choose to believe better about myself. I'm going to choose to believe that I am good enough. I'm going to choose to believe that I do have what it takes. I'm going to choose to believe that I was made for greatness. That doesn't mean money. That doesn't mean fame. That means, in my definition of greatness, to be someone who is great, I think it's to be about significance, right? To be significant in the lives of others. Not about material success. Like, those things are good and fun. But for me, success is about the impact that we have on other people. That's what greatness looks like. Greatness is just living into your potential. And you weren't made to be average, and you weren't made to think average. And average thinking leads to average living. Average thinking can lead to death. And so maybe you haven't been at your best. Maybe you've been showing up with insecurity and anxiety and fear and worry and negativity. You don't need to beat yourself up over that. Just acknowledge it. Say, you know what? Like, I haven't been thinking the way that I should think. I haven't been believing the way that I should believe. I've actually been being held back by my mindset. And I don't want to be like that, because that's not the person that I want to be. That's not the person I was created to be. That's not the person that everyone around me signed up for. That's why we say all the time that a lot of times the only thing you need to change in your situation is your mindset. Because sometimes you can't change your job. You can't change people around you. You can't change the economy. You can't change politicians. You can't change all these things. You get to change you. And when you have a better perspective, when you have a better mindset, suddenly everything around you gets better. It's about our expectations. It's about our level of belief. But it's about us understanding the power that the mindset actually has over us. And if it has that much power, if your mind, by the way that you think, you can convince yourself that you're actually dying to the point that your body will start to shut down, then that means we need to be really, really intentional about our mindset. We can't just say this mindset's a weird thing. I don't need to worry about that. It's like, no, it's of utmost importance. It demands that we be intentional with it every day. Because we also know that we don't get a healthy mindset on accident. We don't get a healthy mindset simply because we want to have a healthy mindset. It is a practice that we must put into play every single day, just like anything else. It has to become a lifestyle, right? We talk about diets, and you always hear people say, man, this diet just didn't work. You know, it was great. Like when I tried it out, I lost 30 pounds. And then, you know, when I went off of it, like all the weight came back. So it didn't last. It's like, well, it's not, it did its job. You didn't do yours, right? The diet worked when you did it. When you stop doing it, it's not, of course, it's not going to work. The same thing is true with our mindset. If we don't make investing in our mindset a daily practice, our muscle that is our mindset is going to get weak, and it is going to work against us. It is going to be a liability, not an asset. But if you pay attention to it, if you invest in it, if you fill it with the right things, your mindset becomes an advantage. It becomes something that works for you rather than against you. And so for today, to think about what you think about. How have you been thinking about yourself? How have you been thinking about other people? What false narratives, what lies have you been believing that have negatively impacted the way that you feel, the way that you operate, the way that you speak, maybe negatively impacting your health? What if it's tied to your mindset? And what are you going to do today to start to counter those things, right? Again, it's not just enough to acknowledge unhealthy thoughts. It's not enough to just acknowledge these false narratives that you've been believing. You have to counter them with truth. All right, you have to counter them with something better, and you have to do it over and over and over again. We've talked about this idea of neural pathways and rewiring your brain, right? You rewire your brain through consistency. Just like it's been wired a certain way because of your consistent thoughts. Right? If you've been thinking negatively your whole life, you've worn that neural pathway to where that's just how it operates. And so if you want to rewire it to be more positive, to be more hopeful, to be more confident, to be more secure, well, you've got to start to work to rewire that. And that's putting those things into practice every single day to develop that new neural pathway. So instead of going negative, you go positive. Instead of going fearful, you go hopeful. Instead of going doubt, you go belief. But it's a choice. And so play out your negative mindset, right? Entertain that negative thought and see where that thought takes you. See what actions it leads to, see what outcomes it leads to, and decide, is that the person that you want to be? Is that the person that you were made to be? Is that the person that your team and your family needs? Or if the answer is no, what if that thought was positive? What if that thought was better? What decision would that lead me to take? What effort would that lead me to put out? And where would that take me? Play those decisions out. Play those actions out. Start with that healthy mindset. Start with those healthy thoughts. Play those decisions out and see where they take you. Say, that's the kind of person I want to be. That's the vision for you that you should have. You need to have a vision for yourself, the kind of person that you want to become. And then you have to look in the mirror and say, is my mindset today putting me on the right trajectory? Am I trending in the right direction to become the kind of person that I want to be based on my current mindset? Or do I need to change some things? Do I need to hit reset and put some new practices in place that get me moving the right direction, that get me making the kind of progress that I need to make, that are getting me to becoming the person that I was meant to be, to help me unlock my potential. The mind is an unbelievably powerful thing, but it's not going to grow on purpose. It's not going to become what we need it to be on purpose. So I'll check through any questions. If you guys have any questions, throw them in the chat. I'm trying to scroll through, by the way, the giant platform I'm on Ascend, trying to check through on LinkedIn and Facebook as well. Let me see if we got any questions or comments. I know it's a Monday. We're trying to grab our coffee and get going, see what the day looks like. But shoot me any questions that you guys have around these stories, around mindset, around practices that you think that you need to put in place. Long-time viewer here, Mr. Jake. You often say that greatness is boring. How can I utilize that to my advantage? Great, Jake, good to see you. That's right. Right, so here's the idea: is like the work of developing a great mindset, the work of doing anything worthwhile is pretty boring, right? And it's not about this like moment of brilliance. It's this discipline, this commitment to keep showing up, to keep doing the work that matters. And most people show up when it's convenient. Like, well, I'll do this when it's easy for me. I'll do this when it makes sense for me. I'll do this when it works to my benefit, as opposed to saying, no, I'm going to do this because this is the kind of person that I am, and I'm committed to becoming a better version of me. So when you live this mindset, you live this lifestyle of commitment rather than convenience, then you actually get better. Because it's not like getting a healthy mindset is not going to be convenient. It's going to take time. It's going to cost you something. You're going to have to make some sacrifice, just like anything else, right? If you want to be great at something, it requires time. It requires effort. It requires you saying yes to certain things and no to certain things. So are you willing to do that? If not, then just don't complain about your mindset. Don't complain that things aren't going your way. Don't complain that you're losing influence. Don't complain that you're not getting promotions. And I'm not trying to be negative with any of this, but like, if we don't want to do the work, then we can't complain about the lack of outcomes. So that's why I always tell teams and leaders that greatness is boring. It's showing up each day and just simply doing the work. It's saying, this is who I am, so this is what I'm going to do. And eventually those things start to happen for you. You get more influence. You get more peace in your life. Drama starts to go away. You start to face normal obstacles, not self-made obstacles. Right? Because too often, like there's enough obstacles in life. There's enough adversity that life is going to throw your way. We don't need to be adding our own adversity with an unhealthy mindset. So if we can get out of our own way, life gets a little bit easier. And then we have the confidence and the strength and the resilience and the mindset to overcome the adversity that we're going to face every day. But if we can't get out of our own way, we can't deal with the rest of the adversity going on around us. And so when it comes to developing this mindset, like it's a process, right? Progress is a process. So you keep showing up and you keep doing the work, even when it doesn't seem fun, even when it doesn't seem worth it, even when it seems a little bit boring. Just another great point, right? Mindsets are contagious, especially if you are the leader. True for anyone. But you have to realize like your mindset is impacting the way that you show up, which means that's impacting the experience that everyone around you is having. And leaders are experience makers. So if you have a negative mindset, you're multiplying that into everyone around you. If you have an insecure mindset, you're multiplying that into everyone around you. Is that the legacy you want to leave? Is that the impact that you want to have on people? Like, man, he was always just really stressed out. Man, she was just always super negative. Man, he never seemed to believe anything was going to work. Man, she was just always isolated and never really trusted people. Like, that's not a legacy that we want to leave. That's not a legacy that's making other people better. That's not a legacy that's worth imitating or worth following. But to show up with the right mindset, to show up with confidence and security and humility and trust and collaboration and belief, well, then everyone around you, that gets into the water system, so to speak. And you start multiplying that and spreading that to the people around you. We've had enough negative conversation about being contagious over the past year. It's like, let's spread good things. Let's spread healthy mindset. Because then what happens, right? Once you start to develop a healthy mindset and you start to become more, have this, what we would call an invincible mindset, and you start to multiply that and spread that to other people, imagine what your team is possible of when you all have a healthy mindset. Imagine what your family would be like if you all had a healthy mindset. right? Then all this drama and disconnect and frustration and bitterness that we're always dealing with, they're not there. And so that's such a great point, that it's on us to develop a healthy mindset so that we can multiply a healthy mindset. You can't give what you don't possess. So if you don't have a healthy mindset, don't expect a healthy team. Right? If you're not at peace, if you're not confident, if you don't believe, if you don't have humility, you're not going to have a team with those characteristics. Your team is following your lead. People around you are following your lead. So your mindset is contagious, which means we have to take extra care of it to be intentional with it. So love the questions, love the conversation. Appreciate you guys showing up. Hopefully you got a few nuggets in there to then now go attack your day, right? Again, our mindset has the power of life and death. And if that's true, then that means we have to be extra intentional with it. So be careful with your mindset today. Be intentional with what you consume. Be intentional with the way that you think, so that you can be the best version of you for yourself, for your family, for your team, for those around you, right? Make your mindset your advantage. Thank you guys, and we'll see you next week. Have an unbelievable week.